My niece wanted me to pay for her trip to Europe. You don't have kids, she said. You can afford it. I said, no, she replied, whatever. You've always been useless to this family. I just smiled, and that night I just cut her off from payments. And the next day she started screaming. It started with a text. No greeting, no punctuation, no explanation. Just, I need $6,300 for Europe. Trip with friends. You can afford it, so let me know soon. I stared at it for a solid minute, trying to process if this was actually happening. The message was from my 17-year-old niece, Kayla. I hadn't heard from her in over a month. Not for a birthday. Not even a check-in. Just silence until she needed something. No, hi, no, how are you? Just the assumption that because I don't have kids, a husband, or an Instagram full of beach photos, I must have a bottomless bank account ready to sponsor her summer in Europe. I didn't reply that day. I honestly didn't trust myself to not say something I'd regret. Instead, I just let it sit. I thought maybe she'd follow up with some sort of reasoning, or at the very least a human-sounding sentence. The next evening she followed up. Not with an apology, not even a please. You're not even married. No kids. You literally have no life. You can afford this. Stop being selfish. That was her pitch. That's what she thought would work. It's not like this was the first time she'd acted entitled. Kayla had always been difficult. Spoiled, if I'm being honest. But it wasn't entirely her fault. My sister Heather, her mom, spent most of her energy trying to keep Kayla happy, even when she couldn't afford to. That's where I came in. Over the last few years I'd been quietly helping. Dance tuition, travel for competitions, outfits, private lessons. You name it, I paid for it. All through autopay and quiet Venmo transfers. Heather always said she'd pay me back but never did. I let it go. It wasn't worth the argument. I didn't tell Kayla I was footing the bill for half her hobbies. She probably assumed her mom was secretly rich, or maybe she just didn't care where the money came from. But after that message, after being told I was selfish for not coughing up $6,300 on command, I replied. No. Simple. Final. Not even 30 seconds later my phone rang. Her name flashed across the screen. I answered. He jumped right into it. Whatever. You've always been useless to this family. Everyone only talks to you when they want something because there's nothing else to talk to you about. You're basically wallpaper. And not even interesting wallpaper. I listened. Quietly. She went on for another minute or two. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. There was nothing I could have said that would have changed her mind about me. She wasn't venting. She was burning the bridge while standing on it. She hung up without saying goodbye. That night I logged into my bank account. I had 5 recurring transactions tied to her. One for her dance studio, one for private lessons, one for competition fees, and 2 others I'd been covering for nearly 3 years. I opened each one. I clicked cancel without hesitation. No warnings. No announcements. Just silence. And by the next morning that silence turned into chaos. I woke up to 8 missed calls and 14 texts. 3 from Kayla. 5 from my sister Heather. The rest were from a number I didn't recognize, which I later realized was Kayla's dance coach. The first text I opened was from Kayla. Why isn't the tuition going through? Did you mess something up? That was sent at 6:43 a.m. The next one came an hour later. I just got an email saying I'm suspended from classes because of non-payment. WF is going on? The last one, sent after she clearly realized what happened. Are you serious right now? You're ruining everything for me. You're so bitter and jealous because no one wants to be you. Whatever. Still no apology. Still no acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she pushed too far. I ignored her messages and opened the ones from Heather. Why did you cancel the payments? I thought we agreed you'd help with this. She has a huge competition next month. What are we supposed to do now? Call me back, this is ridiculous. And then finally, Mom's going to hear about this. You can't just pull support out from under a kid like that. That's when I knew where this was going. My mother, Kayla's grandmother, had always been the judge, jury, and emotional manipulator in our family. Heather had her wrapped around her finger, and whenever something didn't go her way, she went running to her like it was second grade all over again. Sure enough, before noon I got the call. Blocked number. I picked up. It was Mom. No hello. No checking how I was doing. Just straight into it. Jenny, what the hell is going on? Heather said you're cutting Kayla off just because she asked for a trip. She's devastated. This is so unlike you. I didn't argue. I just listened. She listed every reason I was being unreasonable. How Kayla was just a teenager, how I was financially comfortable, and how she was counting on that support to stay competitive in her dance program. Then came the part that pissed me off more than anything else. Sometimes I really wonder why you never had children. Maybe this is why. You don't understand how to care for family. I didn't even respond. Not a word. Just silence. Eventually she hung up, frustrated I wouldn't fight back. But here's the thing. They were all about to find out just how much I'd been holding up behind the scenes. Because cutting off Kayla wasn't the only decision I made that night. I'd already started looking into something bigger, and when they found out, everything would flip. By the next day, the storm had turned into a full-blown family meltdown. Heather started posting vague crap on Facebook. Stuff like, some people only pretend to care about family. When it's time to actually show up, they disappear. She didn't tag me, of course. She never does. But everyone knew. Cousins started texting me asking what happened. A couple even took her side, saying it wasn't that much money, and I was overreacting. But none of them knew the full story. They didn't know that for the last 3 years, I was the one quietly keeping Kayla's world spinning. I was the one who paid $2,000 when she needed emergency braces after breaking a tooth at rehearsal. I was the one who covered hotel stays, flights, costumes, lessons. Heather barely scraped together rent some months, but somehow Kayla was always dressed head to toe in new Nike gear, had the latest iPhone, and spent weekends at out-of-state competitions. All because of me. But no one ever thanked me. No one ever even asked if I was okay with it. It was just expected. Because I was the childless sister. The one with a good job. The one who didn't have a real family to take care of. What none of them realized was how quietly exhausted I'd become. I wasn't just paying for dance. I was paying for Heather's phone bill. Part of her car insurance. Grocery deliveries when she forgot her wallet at the store. She always promised to pay me back and I never once asked her to. But that night I did something I hadn't done before. I sat down, opened a spreadsheet and added everything up. $42,870.17. That's how much I'd spent on Heather and Kayla in the last 4 years. I felt sick looking at the number. I'd never even been to Europe myself. While they were booking studio sessions and flights to competitions, I was turning down vacations, skipping hair appointments, keeping an old phone because it still works fine. I wasn't rich. I just didn't complain when things got tight. But something about Kayla's words stuck with me. You've always been useless to this family. That was the last straw. Not the money. Not the entitlement. That line. That total lack of gratitude. So I made a decision. A real one. Not just to cancel payments. I went further. I emailed the director of the dance school. I explained that the card on file was mine, and I was formally requesting it be removed from their system. I also made it clear that I wasn't family to be contacted regarding payment going forward. I CC'd Heather. No response. 2 days later I got a text from Kayla's coach. Hi Jenny, just checking in. Kayla's tuition hasn't been paid and she's at risk of being pulled from the upcoming national showcase. We'd really love to keep her on the team. Is there any way you can help, even partially? I stared at the message for a long time. And then I replied. Please contact her mother regarding tuition. I'm no longer financially involved. 3 minutes later Heather called me, actually called, which she hadn't done in over a week. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was furious. Rambling. She said I was destroying Kayla's future, that I was holding a grudge over a stupid fight, and ended it with, you just love watching us struggle, don't you? You always have. No, I really didn't. But I'd had enough. I was tired of being quiet. Tired of being the invisible wallet in the corner. And if they wanted a future without me, they were about to get one. Because the next thing I did. That's where it got interesting. I called a lawyer. When I said I called a lawyer, I meant it. This wasn't some dramatic bluff. I already had one. An estate attorney I'd worked with when I bought my house. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, but she remembered me right away. I told her I wanted to update my will and cut some people out of it. She asked the usual questions. Changes in relationships, assets, health. I told her everything was the same except I had finally seen things clearly. That was all she needed to hear. We set up a meeting for later that week. In the meantime, I started organizing my financial files. I had more saved than most people probably expected. No kids, no big spending, no expensive hobbies. Just compound interest and a very boring lifestyle. My house was paid off. My retirement accounts were healthy. I wasn't a millionaire, but I wasn't struggling either. And up until that week, nearly everything was going to Kayla. She had been listed as my primary beneficiary. Not Heather. Not even my mom. Kayla. When I told my lawyer I wanted to remove her, she raised an eyebrow and said, "Anyone replacing her?" I nodded. My friend's daughter, Mia. She's 19. I've known her since she was little. She works 2 part-time jobs, takes care of her little brother while her mom works nights, and goes to community college. She never asks for anything. When I helped her buy textbooks last year, she cried and offered to pay me back in payments. That's the kind of person I want to help succeed. That's the kind of person who would never tell me I was useless. So that's what I did. The paperwork was signed. My estate would go to Mia if anything happened to me. Every dollar. Every account. The house. Her. Everything. Kayla and Heather were removed completely. Not a cent. That was satisfying enough. But then something happened I didn't see coming. Mom called again. I ignored it. Then she showed up at my house. She knocked for a long time. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. I opened the door. She didn't say hello. She walked right past me and into the living room. She had a printed copy of Kayla's competition schedule in her hand. She dropped it on my coffee table and sat down. "Fix this," she said. I told her it wasn't my responsibility anymore. That Heather and Kayla could figure it out like every other parent and teenager does. Mom didn't like that. She said Heather was struggling. That Kayla was under incredible pressure. That I was being cruel. Then she looked at me and said something I will never forget. "You're just bitter because you're alone. You have money and nothing else. At least Kayla has a future." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there and let the words hang in the air. Then I stood up and walked to the hallway. I came back with a folder and handed it to her. Inside was a copy of my new will. She opened it. "Read it." I watched her eyes move down the page. She didn't say a word. Just kept reading. When she got to the part with Mia's name, she blinked a few times. Then she looked at me. I said nothing. She stood up, folder still in hand, and walked out. No goodbyes. No slammed door. Just silence. For once I was the one who got to walk away clean. But this wasn't over yet. Because a few days later someone else showed up, and she wasn't nearly as quiet. It was a Friday afternoon, a little after 5, when I heard the doorbell ring. I wasn't expecting anyone. I'd just finished watering my plants and was debating whether to order takeout or force myself to cook. I peeked through the window and froze. It was Kayla. I hadn't seen her in person since her meltdown over the phone. I thought maybe she'd simmer down eventually, maybe send one of those half-hearted teenager texts like, "Sorry if I was a jerk." But no. She decided to go for the dramatic entrance instead. She was dressed in one of those oversized sweatshirts that probably cost more than my microwave, holding her phone in one hand and what looked like an iced coffee in the other. I opened the door. She didn't even say hi. "So, I guess you think you're a badass now?" Just cutting me off, ruining my chances to compete and turning grandma against mom. I stayed quiet. She stepped inside without asking. "You seriously need to get over yourself. You're mad because I asked you for a favor? Everyone asks you for favors. You're just dramatic." I asked her why she even came over. "Because I heard what you did," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "The will," she snapped. "Grandma showed mom and mom showed me. So that was it. The real reason she came wasn't to patch things up. It was because she realized she'd lost something. Something big." She went on. "You're punishing me because I called you out. You always acted like you were better than everyone else just because you have money. You don't even have a life. You live alone in this boring house and do what? Read books and pay people's bills." It was like watching a kid throw darts in the dark, hoping something would land. She thought she could guilt me. Or maybe she thought I'd cave like I always used to. But then she said something I never expected. "I need you to put me back in. You don't understand. If you're not paying for dance and I'm not getting any of that inheritance, my mom can't send me to college." That stopped me cold. Not because of the money, but because I suddenly realized something. They'd been counting on it. They'd planned around it. All this time they hadn't just assumed I'd keep paying for dance. They'd expected I'd fund college too. Maybe even more. I asked her, flat out, if that's what they were expecting. She said yes without hesitation. Like it was normal. Like I owed them that. I nodded slowly and told her something I'd never said before. That I never chose to become anyone's backup plan. That just because I didn't have a husband or kids didn't mean I was some walking ATM with no boundaries. That people who weaponize family guilt are the ones who end up broke. Not just in money but in character. She scoffed. This is why no one talks to you. You're miserable. You'll die alone in this house and no one will even care. And then she left. Just walked out like she'd dropped some final truth bomb. Like she'd won. But here's the thing. That night I made one more change. Something I hadn't thought to do until then. I called Mia. I told her what was happening. I told her about the will. And I asked her if there was anything she needed now, not someday. College, housing, medical, anything. She got quiet and said, I'm okay. But, my mom's been thinking about going back to school. She gave up on it years ago. I said I'd help. Not because someone guilted me into it. But because it felt right. Meanwhile Kayla? She still had one final move to play. And it was a bad one. It happened the next week. A certified letter arrived in my mailbox. At first I thought it might be a formal response from Heather. Maybe something passive-aggressive dressed up in legal language. But when I opened the envelope I actually laughed. They were threatening to sue me. Heather and Kayla, through some cheap online legal service, had drafted a letter accusing me of breach of commitment and intentional disruption of future educational opportunity. Basically, they were trying to argue that because I'd been financially supporting Kayla's dance and other activities, I had committed to her future. And now that I'd stopped they were suffering damages. It was ridiculous. Desperate. Hilarious even. But also sad. I sent it to my lawyer immediately. She called me within the hour, trying not to laugh too hard as she read parts of it out loud. This isn't how contracts work, she said. They have no case. At all. But if you'd like I can send a response just to shut this down. I told her to go ahead. 3 days later my attorney emailed them a formal reply. In legal terms it was polite but ice cold. She explained that not only did I owe them nothing, but if they persisted in this nonsense, we would consider legal action for harassment. That was the end of the lawsuit threat. They dropped it and went silent. But it wasn't over. The following weekend I got a call from a blocked number again. This time I answered. I was expecting Heather. It was Kayla. She didn't sound angry anymore. She sounded small. She said she'd been pulled from the competition. That her coach had told her unless tuition was paid in full by the end of the month, she'd lose her spot permanently. And that the team, girls she'd danced with since she was 10, had stopped talking to her. Then she said something I didn't expect. I'm sorry. Not because she meant it. Because she was scared. She asked if I could pay just for this last competition. That if she could finish out the season maybe things could be fixed. She was crying by the end of the call and part of me, the old part, wanted to say yes. But I didn't. I told her something very simple. This isn't about dance. It's about how you treat people who help you. Then I told her goodbye. I hung up. I blocked her number. I haven't spoken to Kayla since. Heather either. But a few months later something unexpected happened. Mia showed up at my door with a small box. Inside was a card and a necklace. The card said, "Thank you for believing in people who don't ask and for walking away from people who only take." The necklace had a small charm on it, a book and a tiny heart. I wear it almost every day. Sometimes you don't need revenge. You just need peace. And cutting them off gave me exactly that.